What is this? Real quick, before we get started, a lot of people spam requested me to talk about this episode basically the moment it came out. Please don't do that. I don't mind being requested to cover certain topics, but if you're gonna write like 20 comments begging me to cover something, I am not going to want to do it. The William Country short was not an invitation for that sort of behavior. I'm covering this episode because I personally have some thoughts on it that I thought would make for a fun video, and also because if I want the algorithm to pick up my OSC videos, I have to make more OSC content. So, Jack and Jellify recently had a very long stream where they replayed every episode of the series leading up to episode 100, which is a monumental feat for any series, especially something indie like BFDI. Most people were expecting Teapot 21, and I even saw a few people thinking that it might be IDFB 2. Instead, we get the first episode of Season 6, I guess. Battle for Dream Island Elsewhere. After sitting down to watch the episode proper, it was only 9 minutes, so not much of a hassle, I honestly have some mixed thoughts. Obviously, this is meant to be a much smaller scale season. With BFDIA and Teapot releasing colossal episodes just a few months ago, it makes sense that the crew would want something smaller to wind down. I looked into the production of this episode, and based on what I've heard from Sam, BFDIE won't impact the production of either BFDIA or Teapot. And in fact, the next episode already has a release date 1 week from today, which is very fast. If I had to guess, I think this is going to be a weekly series meant to give us something to watch while the bigger episodes are in production. And honestly, I don't mind that idea. I don't think a simple season like this is that much of a problem. I think this cast, while nowhere near as funny as the BFDIA crew, are pretty neat. I don't love any of them just yet, but I like characters like Hot Dog and Fern, and I'm really excited for Ruler. I mean, come on, he's voiced by Tomska. You're not gonna complain about Tomska, are you? Maybe Gen Alpha is too young to really care about this guy, but Tomska is genuinely one of my favorite personalities on YouTube, and a lot of my comedic writing is based on his style of humor. Tomska and BFDI is a match made in heaven, and I'm genuinely thrilled to hear him voicing a contestant. This is the only ruler that will ever receive my vote, which is saying something because David is also in this season. I don't know about the rest of you, but I think David is awesome and hilarious, and I hope good things happen to him. We've also got the announcer hosting another season, which I love. The announcer speaker box is and always has been my favorite BFDI host. Despite his robotic text-to-speech voice, his dialogue is always dripping with personality. He's so goofy and fun, and honestly, I'm just really glad to see him again. The challenge honestly isn't too special, it's just the challenge from one with substantially less child murder and substantially more hot dog murder. This type of challenge, as straightforward as it is, feels more in line with BFDI Mini, but not quite as charming. Still, it gets the job done, and there's still a lot of funny gags here. Like Fern with her name tag, and Hot Dog dying like 87 times. I like the idea of Nightmare Island, and I like the trampoline bit too. So judging it purely by its own merits, I think BFDIE 1 is very enjoyable. It has David, it has Announcer, and it has Tomska, and because of that, I cannot in good conscience bring myself to dislike it. Unfortunately, there is a lot of context around this episode that sort of sours my feelings on it. First and foremost, while I do like this episode as a silly fun side quest, a silly fun side quest probably shouldn't be hyped up as episode 100. Episode 100 is a big deal, and the fact that BFDIE was preceded by a live stream of every episode that came before, people's expectations were reasonably set very high. Keep in mind that this is the first episode released after BFDIA 23, an absolute monolith of an episode and probably one of the best in the series. I'm not sure if it would have been possible to swap these two around given the animation cycle, but I think that BFDIA 23 is an episode that absolutely would have lived up to the hype of episode 100. I don't think that every episode of this show has to be a big grand adventure. I'd actually prefer if they weren't, but I don't blame people for expecting an episode of that quality given all the hype that J&J built up for it. One thing that personally worries me is the voting. Since the next episode releases on the 8th and voting is open until the last second, this is clearly not a viewer voting show. If I had to guess, maybe the person who gets the most votes here might have immunity for episode 3 if they make it there? I don't know, on its own, for this goofy little season, I don't mind this format. This is meant to be a rapid-fire series of episodes, so ultimately, I don't think it matters too much. But please, please, for the love of God, do not make this a staple of the main seasons. I recognize that this probably isn't the case, but a small part of me worries that this season might also be a test for a new voting format, and that really doesn't sit well with me. I made the decision halfway through season 2 to swap over to contestant voting, and I think that ultimately for the story they wanted to tell, that was probably necessary. But I won't lie, I'm a lot less invested in contestant voting than I am with viewer voting. And BFDIE isn't exactly confirmed to be contestant voting. My guess is that it'll either be a series of purge challenges, or if not that, maybe a mix of different elimination methods. Hot dog is still an option for voting despite being eliminated, so maybe the important thing these votes are for is like an advantage in the episode 3 challenge, and if hot dog wins, he just gets nothing. I have no idea. This new style of voting could be for literally anything, but as long as it sticks to this season, and only this season, I can sleep well at night. Am I overthinking part of a season that is clearly meant to be casual? Yes, I am, absolutely. But in my defense, I'm a content analysis channel. I kinda have to overthink certain things, otherwise this video would be like a minute long. But at the same time, in my opinion, viewer voting is just as important to BFDI's identity as the fact that the characters are objects. And as someone who really does like the viewer voting part of the show, I do hope that BFDIE doesn't mark a change for that. Moving on, I do also question the decision to make this the official Season 6, because this is clearly meant to be a side project. I probably would have labeled this as a spin-off, but I don't really care that much. It just seems odd to me that they'd label the seasons this way. Because based on what people have been saying about it, BFDIE is probably going to be the least liked season of the show, no matter how you slice it. It's like putting a fish into an aquarium tank with a bunch of killer whales. Like, yeah, the fish can swim pretty good, but oh my god, those are killer whales. That poor fish does not look very strong in comparison. And yeah, based on what I've heard of people's first impressions, it doesn't seem like people are very excited about this season. Apparently there's even a petition to cancel it, which I think is very unnecessary. BFDIE is not hurting the show, unless they decide to make the elimination approach the new standard for the big seasons, but I'm optimistic that this will not happen. BFDIE is intentionally aiming a lot lower, so I think if you choose to treat BFDIE like a spin-off, which is what I'm going to do, you'll probably enjoy it a lot more. But even then, BFDI already has its own spin-off, and I enjoy that one a lot more. Because even though it's been stated that BFDIE won't affect the production of Teapot or BFDIA, those aren't the only seasons that J&J are working on. None of you forgot about BFDI Mini, right? Because it's time to talk about it. I don't know about the rest of you, but me personally, I love BFDI Mini. True to its name, it feels like it delivers on the fun and whimsy of your typical BFDI season, but condensed into tiny bite-sized packages. Even though the characters don't speak like at all, I still feel like their actions and facial expressions really give them all a unique personality and reason to root for them. Rose, USB, Lithium, Spruce Tree, Beehive, Red Currant, Surfboard, Birdie, and my goat Popsicle, who absolutely should have won Tasty, he was robbed. They might not be as well developed as the main cast, but I still really like them. And wow, look who's here in BFDIE. Granted, BFDI Mini is still a viewer voting season, and BFDIE can't do that given its weekly release schedule, but hear me out here. This is the cast of BFDI Mini Redux, essentially BFDI Mini All-Stars. All 12 of the characters in this season were voted in by the viewers to compete. You see where I'm going with this, I hope. What if BFDIE was BFDI Mini Redux? And in order to celebrate its 9th season, it's an actual season with voice acting and a longer runtime. I don't even think you'd have to change much about the episode. People already really like those characters, so I think the premise of a new season would have gone over a lot better. 8 minutes is short for a BFDI episode, but for a BFDI mini episode, it would be a special occasion. And while it would be unfortunate to lose the viewer voting aspect of the eliminations, keep in mind this cast was decided by viewer voting. That, in tandem with whatever these new votes are for, I think would be enough to make the audience feel like they still have some agency in the season. The only concern I have is that BFDIE uses the BFDIA style of animation, while BFDI Mini uses the BFB style of animation, and I'm not sure which of those is harder. But in that hypothetical scenario, I think I'd be fine with either. Every animation style that this show uses is one that I like. Ultimately, I don't think there's anything majorly wrong with BFDIE. I just think that J&J hyped it up too much. I think the first episode of a new season is exciting, and I don't mind that this season is shorter and more laid back. It's meant to give us something to watch while we wait for the bigger episodes, and I like that. But I'm not gonna pretend like that type of season is in any way comparable to BFDIA or Teapot, and for an audience that was expecting that, I do understand why they're disappointed. With the benefit of hindsight, I think it might have been better to introduce this episode as a special surprise rather than the 100th episode of the series, and then give the Teapot 21 release date shortly thereafter just so people don't complain about it. That way, maybe people might not have set their expectations super duper high and they'd have been happy happier with the end result. I've spent a good chunk of this video criticizing how J&J decided to release the episode, and while I do think that they could have gone about it in a better way, I have the benefit of hindsight and the reactions of the fandom to work off of, whereas they did not. So I don't think that J&J made a terrible mistake releasing this episode when they did. I just think that the timing, in retrospect, could have been a little bit better. As for me, I like the episode, and for a weekly series, I think it'll be a fun distraction while we wait for Teapot and BFDIA. But I still think that BFDI Mini is better. And that's about it. I didn't have too much to say about this episode, but I figured that if I was ever going to talk about it, it might as well be now. Real quick, I want to give a big thank you to all of my channel members: Sheepishly, Novaz, Help Her Escape, Factually False, Sour Guts, Nachos, Shoelace, Commander Cone, MI37000, Hadori Unlimited, Neo Knight, Coco Fondula, Ryu, Kosa, I Am Critterling, Aqua Run 15, and most of all, Hildegarn. As always, you guys are awesome, and I appreciate your support so much. For the rest of you, you can become a channel member by clicking the join button below, but if you don't want to spend any money, that is perfectly fine. If you like my content and want to see more, consider leaving a like, hyping the video, dropping a comment, and subscribing to the channel because it really does help. Feel free to let me know what you all thought of BFDIE, as I'm genuinely curious to see what most people think about it. Until then, I will see you all next time. Goodbye.